My parents left for Italy with my sister after my car accident. We're heading to Rome for fun. Don't call. My name is Isabella, and I never thought that at 27 I'd be the one holding everything together. Most people my age are focused on their careers or trying to figure out their lives. But here I am, trying to manage my own affairs while paying for nearly all of my family's needs.
Isabella, darling, Katya's therapy bill came in today.
My mom's voice crackled through the phone last Sunday. It was the same conversation we'd been having for months.
I know you've already helped so much, but...
She hesitated. I sighed, opening my banking app while cradling the phone between my ear and shoulder. How much this time, Mom? How did we get here? The story is simple, but living through it was anything but. My sister Katya, who's 3 years older than me, went through what Mom calls a career setback a year ago. That's putting it mildly. In reality, Katya had a full-blown breakdown when she didn't get the promotion she was expecting. Instead of handling it professionally, she quit on the spot, burning bridges faster than a forest fire.
I can't believe they chose Brianna over me,
she sobbed into my shoulder that day.
Do you know how long I worked there? How hard I tried?
I remember sitting in my new apartment, the one I'd proudly rented after graduating university, listening to her complaints. I thought she'd calm down in a couple of weeks, maybe even find a better job. But that didn't happen. For 7 months, she processed her emotions, and then another 7 months applying only to very specific jobs. That's how my parents explained her unemployment. Meanwhile, I made sure their bills were paid. There was food in the fridge, and Katya could see her therapist 4 times a week. The therapy is really helping her, Mom would say as I transferred another chunk of my salary to their account. She's making progress. But from where I stood, there was no progress. All I saw was my money disappearing. I watched my sister sit in our old family home, scrolling through job listings with ridiculous demands like a 5-day weekend and unlimited vacation. Meanwhile, I was taking on extra hours at my marketing job, agreeing to additional clients, and barely finding time to breathe. This year drained us all. I could see the toll stress was taking on my parents. Mom had more worry lines on her face. Dad's shoulders slumped lower every time Katya rejected another job for not being good enough. Seeing their tired faces, I realized we all needed something good, something worth living for. That's when I decided to plan a trip to Rome. Just for the 3 of us, Mom, Dad, and me. For weeks, I meticulously planned every detail, the perfect hotel, private tours, and experiences tailored for them. A cheese-tasting tour for Mom. She'd always dreamed of trying authentic Italian cheese. A vineyard and wine tour for Dad. He loved a good glass of red. I thought this trip would be the perfect chance to forget our stress and create happy memories. I pictured us strolling through Trastevere, sipping wine in cozy cafes, and finally seeing my parents smile without a trace of worry. But life can turn upside down in an instant. One moment I was driving to a client meeting, thinking about my presentation and our trip. The next, there was a loud crash, the screech of metal, and then nothing. I only remember fragments of the accident. Sirens, the voices of paramedics, a bright light overhead. When I fully came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. My whole body ached like one giant bruise. The doctor said I'd had emergency surgery, but everything went well. Still, I wasn't ready to be discharged.
You were very lucky, the nurse said, adjusting my IV. The airbag saved you from the worst, but that car hit you hard.
I was still groggy when my parents and Katya walked into the room. Mom was holding her favorite travel bag, the one she'd bought especially for Rome. Seeing it, I felt a knot in my stomach.
I'm sorry, I said, my voice hoarse from the tube. We'll have to postpone the trip. Don't worry, I'll cancel everything today, and we'll go when I'm better.
I expected them to understand. Maybe they'd be a little disappointed, but still supportive. But what happened next, I couldn't have predicted. Instead of comforting me, Mom spoke in a strangely calm voice. "There's no need to cancel anything, darling." I blinked, thinking the painkillers must have messed with my hearing. "What?" "Your father and I talked," she said, adjusting the strap of her bag. "We think we should still go. You can rest here, and we'll take Katya with us." Her words hit harder than the car. I stared at them, waiting for it to be a joke. "Katya's had a tough year," Mom added, patting my sister's shoulder. "She really needs this break." Katya stepped forward. "You were supposed to look after the house while we were gone. Since you can't, hire someone. Make sure they're reliable." I lay there, mouth agape, unable to speak. This couldn't be real. My family was standing here, discussing their vacation, while I was in the hospital less than a day after major surgery. And then they actually waved goodbye and left, leaving me alone with the monotonous beep of the heart monitor and the bitter realization that they'd abandoned me for a trip I'd planned and paid for. I lay there for what felt like hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. The painkillers couldn't dull the ache in my chest, the kind that had nothing to do with my injuries. "They didn't even ask how I was," I whispered to myself. "Not about the surgery, the accident, nothing." The nurse passed by for the third time, probably noticing my heart rate spiking on the monitor. She stopped in the doorway, concerned. "Everything okay, sweetie? Your numbers are up a bit?" "My phone," I said, suddenly remembering. "Could you bring it? It should be with my things." A few minutes later, she returned with a plastic bag. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my phone, relieved it was intact. The screen lit up with my old wallpaper, a Christmas photo with my parents. I quickly changed it to a default image. "At least something survived the crash," I muttered, opening my email. There was a folder labeled Rome Trip. All the confirmations and plans I'd worked so hard on. I stared at it for a second. "Well," I said to myself, my fingers hovering over the first email. "If they see me as a travel agent instead of a daughter, I'll act like one." And I started canceling everything. First, the hotel. A few clicks, and the luxurious room with a view of the Municipio was gone. Then the tours. Mom's cheese-tasting tour, canceled. Dad's wine tour, gone. The guide for the Forum, the Trastevere cruise, the skip-the-line pass for the Municipio, all canceled. With each cancellation, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness, yes, because I'd dreamed of sharing those moments with my parents. But also something else. Not quite satisfaction, but perhaps justice. They'd treated my accident like an inconvenience, taking Katya, who hadn't contributed a dime to the family in a year, on a trip I'd paid for while I lay in the hospital. One last detail remained: the return flight. I stared at the confirmation for a long time before hitting cancel. The petty part of me wondered how they'd react when they realized they'd have to find their own way back. When it was done, I put my phone on silent, placed it face down on the table, and closed my eyes. They'd figure it out soon enough. Maybe somewhere over the Atlantic they'd realize that actions have consequences, even in a family. Maybe when they landed in Rome with no hotel, no tours, and no tickets home, they'd finally feel what it's like to be abandoned and left to fend for themselves. The first message came at 3:25 a.m. They must have just landed and headed to the hotel. My phone lit up on the table, buzzing quietly. Despite the pain in my ribs, I managed a small smile. By breakfast, 15 missed calls. By lunch, 40. Messages poured in one after another. I kept track on the back of a hospital menu just for curiosity's sake. Missed calls: Mom, 25. Dad, 18. Katya, 48. Messages, 50 plus. Voicemails, 21. I smirked. Let's see what's so urgent that they're bombarding a hospital patient's phone. When the count passed 51, I picked up the phone, wincing from the pain. First, a message from Katya.
How could you be so cruel and selfish? We're standing in the hotel lobby with nowhere to go. You're heartless. Then Mom. Isabella, I'm so disappointed in you. This isn't how you treat family. We've never done this to each other. I don't understand why you're doing this to us, your own parents. I stared at the screen, shaking my head. Now they were talking about family. I couldn't hold back a laugh, even though it made my stitches ache. We've never done this to each other.
Seriously? What about abandoning your injured daughter in the hospital for a vacation she paid for? Dad's messages were shorter but just as demanding. Call me right now. Fix this. Your mother is crying. The phone buzzed nonstop. New messages appeared faster than I could read them. The hotel won't check us in. Where are our tours? What do you mean you canceled the return tickets? Answer right now. I was reading a particularly nasty message from Katya about how I'd ruined everything when Dr. Olivier walked in, his face serious. Miss Wilson, your phone has been ringing for hours. This is a hospital, not a call center. We need quiet for the patients. I flushed with embarrassment. I'm sorry, doctor, it's just... Before I could stop myself, I blurted out everything. The accident, the Rome trip I'd planned, my family's reaction, and how I'd canceled it all. He listened carefully, his expression growing darker. Then the phone rang again. Mom's number. Dr. Olivier didn't hesitate to pick it up. Hello, this is Dr. Olivier from Memorial Hospital. I need you to stop calling. Your daughter needs rest. She has another surgery coming up. I could hear Mom's sharp voice even from across the room. I don't care about the surgery. Put my daughter on. She needs to fix what she's done. Dr. Olivier's face shifted from surprise to disbelief, then anger. He hung up without a word. I'll hold on to this until after your surgery, he said firmly, pocketing the phone. You need to focus on recovery, not this. The next few days passed in a haze of painkillers and sleep. Without my phone, I had no idea what was happening with my family in Rome. But the silence, honestly, was healing in itself. However, life loves surprises. On the 4th day after my surgery, Karen from marketing popped into my room. Smuggled goods, she whispered with a grin. She and Nick from accounting had snuck in real coffee from a nearby cafe. The next day, Brittany and James from my team came with magazines and office gossip. The day after that, my cousin Mary, whom I hadn't seen in months, showed up with homemade soup. We made a schedule, Brittany said, showing me a color-coded chart on her tablet. Someone from the office will visit every day. We won't let our best manager get bored. For the first time in a while, I felt cared for. Tears welled up in my eyes. Guys, you didn't have to, I started, but couldn't finish. Oh, come on, James waved it off. After all the times you've bailed us out, this is nothing. Even my boss, Mr. Ryan, called the hospital. Isabella, don't worry about a thing, he said in his gruff voice, softer than usual. The accident happened during work hours. The company's insurance will cover everything. You'll get a good settlement. It'll help with recovery and more. On the 5th day, Dr. Olivier returned my phone, placing it on the table. I think you're strong enough to handle this now, he said, but I'd understand if you wanted to keep it off a bit longer. I took the phone with trembling hands. Over 125 missed calls, countless messages, dozens of voicemails. I skimmed through them, watching their tone shift. First, please. Isabella, see our side. We're family. We can work this out. Then manipulation. How could you humiliate us like this? We don't deserve this. And finally, anger. You won't believe the dump we're staying in, Katya wrote. There are bed bugs. Dad's sleeping on a cot. We hear gunshots at night. Mom's messages weren't much better.
We can barely afford food, eating from street vendors like homeless people. Not a single tour, we've seen nothing. You wanted your parents to suffer. The latest was a demand for return tickets, with threats about what would happen if I didn't fix things. I sighed, setting the phone face down. Then there was a knock at the door. Sophia from HR came in with cards and smuggled cookies. "Ready to learn poker?" she asked with a smile. I looked at her, then at the phone, and made a decision. I turned it off completely and said, "Deal." I was having a good day when they burst in. The physical therapist had just finished a session, and I was proud. I'd taken a few steps on my own. Then I heard the sound of suitcases rolling on the floor. The only warning. They stormed into the room like a hurricane. "How dare you!" Mom's face was red with fury. She was still in her travel clothes. "How dare you do this to us!" Katya dragged her designer suitcase, the one I'd given her last Christmas. Her eyes were blazing. Dad stood in the doorway, angry and embarrassed. Nurse Kate, who was adjusting my IV, stepped between them and the bed. "Quiet! This is a hospital, not a circus!" But they didn't listen. 3 weeks of anger poured out of Katya. "She's fine." She gestured wildly at my room. "Lying in a clean bed, eating 3 meals a day, while we suffered." Something in me snapped. Maybe the painkillers gave me courage, or maybe I was just done. Suffered? My voice was quiet but sharp. "Let's talk about suffering." The room froze. For a year, I worked myself to exhaustion, paying the bills, buying groceries, funding Katya's therapy while she sat at home turning down perfectly good jobs because they weren't perfect. Mom opened her mouth to interrupt, but I held up a hand. "Don't. I planned this trip as a gift, spent months organizing it, paid for it with my money. Then I got into an accident, had surgery. And what did you do? Ask how I was? Take care of me? No, you took Katya, who hasn't contributed a cent in a year, on my trip while I lay here." I saw shame flicker across Mom's face, but it vanished quickly. "You can go to Rome any time," she snapped. "For us, it was our only chance." Then Katya delivered the final blow. "You could have been disabled after the accident. Then you'd definitely have canceled everything. That's why I convinced Mom and Dad to go while it was still paid for." Silence. Even Mom looked shocked. My fingers shook as I pressed the call button. "Security, please remove 4 people from my room and add them to the no visitors list." "Isabella, don't you dare!" Mom started, but it was too late. 3 security guards walked in. "The patient is recovering from surgery," one said firmly. "You need to leave." I watched as they were escorted out. Mom's shouts echoed down the hall, Dad's silence spoke volumes, and Katya's protests faded into the distance. The next day, I did what I should have done long ago. I blocked their numbers. Done. I hesitated a moment longer over Dad's, but his silence hurt just as much as their actions. I opened my banking apps and canceled all auto payments for the family. No more transfers for Katya's therapy, no utility bills, no grocery money. I felt a lightness, like a weight had been lifted. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe freely. 3 weeks later, I was discharged. My apartment became my sanctuary. My colleagues had cleaned it, stocked the fridge, and placed flowers on the table. No drama, no manipulation, no demands, just silence and peace. I focused on recovery, doing my exercises, working remotely. Life settled into a rhythm free from my family's problems. A month after my discharge, my phone buzzed with messages from relatives and friends. Mom had posted on Facebook, "My daughter abandoned us in our time of need. She turned her back on her struggling parents. Katya can't find a job, bills are piling up, and Isabella won't respond." Some of her friends, unaware of the truth, chimed in with sympathy. "How awful to raise an ungrateful daughter. Family comes first. I'll pray for her. I was about to close the app when Aunt Linda messaged. Linda, seriously? You left Isabella in the hospital after her accident for a vacation she paid for, taking Katya instead of supporting your daughter. We know the truth. Other relatives joined in. How I'd supported my parents for a year, how Katya hadn't worked, how I'd planned the trip, how I'd been visited while my parents gallivanted in Europe. 3 days later, the post was gone, but screenshots were already circulating in the family chat. Mom's plan had backfired. 4 months later, I walked into the office without a cane. My steps were steady, my head held high. Physical therapy had paid off. I was back to normal, even stronger. I expected a quiet day, but my team was gathered around my desk with a massive cake. Welcome back, Isabella. 3 tiers of vanilla and chocolate, fondant flowers, and a figurine of a woman on top. Tears welled up. Guys, I started, but couldn't finish. Karen hugged me. Nick sliced the cake. This is for you, Brittany said, handing me an envelope from the insurance company. I opened it amidst my colleagues and nearly dropped it. The settlement amount had a shocking number of zeros. That night, with a slice of cake, I opened my laptop and started searching for trips. The same hotel in Rome. I booked it for 4 months from now, single occupancy. I smiled, clicking confirm. I booked tours for myself. The cheese tour, the wine tour, a forum guide, all on my terms, no compromises. My phone buzzed, my family trying again. Mom, we miss you. Dad, a voicemail. Katya, a letter. That week, they sent flowers. I threw them in the trash. The latest message came from an unknown number. Isabella, this is Mom. Talk to us. We're family. I deleted it without replying and returned to my laptop. Confirmations rolled in. Hotel, tours, flights. Now they only brought joy. I was planning for myself. Setting the laptop aside, I walked to the window, gazing at the city lights. 3 months. I'd be in Rome, wandering, dining in cafes, creating my own memories on my own terms. The phone buzzed again. Another call. I didn't look. I closed my laptop, smiled, and deleted old family photos from my gallery. Time for new pictures, new adventures. Sometimes the family you choose, friends, colleagues, kind people, means more than the one you're born into. I learned that the hard way, but as I planned my trip, I knew I'd never forget it.